Ever been handed a set of complex standards or instructions and just felt overwhelmed?
Yeah.
Like you need a guide just to figure out step one.
Yeah, that happens a lot, especially with things like IT audit frameworks.
Exactly. So think of this deep dive as your shortcut, your personal orientation. We're going to clarify some key concepts in IT audit engagement planning, hopefully without the usual information overload.
hmm And today, we're really zeroing in on how IT auditors strategically prepare for their work. We'll be looking closely at Performance Standard 1203, which is all about engagement planning,
Right.
and its partner, Performance Guideline 2203. It's basically about laying the groundwork for a successful audit.
And it's good to remember where this comes from. We're talking about ICE's IT audit framework, ITAF.
That's the one.
It's pretty much the go-to guide for professional practices in IT audit and assurance. It gives auditors the standards and guidance they need for, planning, doing the work, and reporting back.
Absolutely. And while it's primarily written for assurance pros, honestly, anyone wanting to understand how IT audits work can get a lot out of it. It shows the methodical thinking behind it all.
Yeah, and it's crucial to know the difference here. The standards, like 1203 we're discussing, they're mandatory. You have
Yeah.
to follow them.
Non-negotiable. But the guidelines, like 2203, they offer practical advice. Helpful, but not strictly required. Think of them as the how-to for the must-do.
Okay, got it. So the mission for you listening today is really to get a solid handle on these specific rules and tips for engagement planning. We want to give you actionable insights, keep it clear, keep it focused.
Let's do it. So starting with the core requirement, Performance Standard 1203.
Okay.
At its heart, Section 1203.1 makes it crystal clear. IT audit practitioners must plan every single engagement, period.
No winging it allowed then.
Definitely not. And that planning needs to really think about the nature of the audit, the timing when's best to do things, and the extent, like how deep do we need to go with the procedures?
So it's not just a checklist, it's strategic thinking up front.
Exactly. Thoughtful planning sets the whole tone. And the standard lists key things this plan must include. Think of these as the essential ingredients.
All right, what are they?
First up, the specific areas to be audited. Sounds obvious, maybe.
Well, yeah, you need to know what you're looking at.
But defining that focus clearly is step one. Then, the objectives of the audit. What are we actually trying to achieve here? What questions need answers?
Okay, makes sense. Objectives first.
Then the scope. This nails down the boundaries. What's in the audit, and just as critical, what's out?
Right, defining the playing field. Avoids confusion later.
Precisely. Next, resources. Who's on the team? What tools do they need? What's the budget looking like? And alongside that, the schedule key dates, deadlines.
The who, the what, the how much, and the when. Got it.
Then the plan needs the timeline for the whole engagement and what deliverables are expected, what reports, what findings.
So everyone knows what to expect at the end.
Absolutely. Transparency is key. And a really big one, compliance. The plan has to show how the audit will stick to all relevant laws, regulations, and professional standards. It's baked in from the start.
Can't be an afterthought, I imagine.
Never. Now, for audits that aren't strictly about ticking compliance boxes, maybe more performance-focused, Standard 1203.1 emphasizes using a risk-based approach.
Ah, okay. So if it's not about legal rules, it's about finding the biggest potential problems.
You got it. The planning gets shaped by where the auditors assess the highest risks might be in the IT setup. It's about focusing effort where it matters most.
That seems really efficient, directing energy smartly.
Exactly. Risk assessment drives the plan in those cases. It ensures you're not just, boiling the ocean, but looking where issues are most likely. The standard also says to consider any engagement-specific issues, things unique to this particular audit.
Like quirks of the organization or the specific system being looked at?
Could be, yeah. Things that don't fit a standard template. Then, documentation and reporting requirements need to be outlined. What records will we keep? What will the final report cover? And how will it look?
Okay, the practicalities of recording and presenting.
And very relevant today, the use of technology and data analysis techniques. Auditors need to plan how they'll leverage tech effectively. It's not all manual checks anymore.
Good point. Using tools to be smarter and maybe faster.
Often, yes. Standard 1203.1 also brings in a practical point. Consider the cost of the audit versus the potential benefits. Is the effort worth the assurance or risk reduction we expect?
Like a value for money check. Makes sense. Don't spend a fortune finding tiny issues.
Precisely. And finally, something crucial for smooth running, communication and escalation protocols. What happens if something goes wrong? Scope limits, people unavailable, who tells who, and what's the process?
Planning for bumps in the road. Proactive.
That's the idea. Anticipate challenges. Now, 1203.1 also acknowledges reality. Things change.
Ah, so the plan isn't set in stone.
Not entirely. As auditors get into the fieldwork, they might uncover things that mean the original procedures need tweaking. Flexibility is built in.
So you plan thoroughly, but you stay adaptable. It's dynamic.
Exactly. And to make sure all this planning translates into actual systematic steps, Standard 1203.2 requires practitioners to develop and document an audit program.
Okay, so the engagement plan is the big picture strategy,
Mm-hmm.
and the audit program is the detailed step-by-step how-to guide for the audit team.
Perfect analogy. The program lists the specific procedures, the instructions to actually do the audit work outlined in the plan. It makes the plan actionable.
Got it. So that's the what from Standard 1203. Now on to the how with Guideline 2203.
Exactly. Let's shift gears to Guideline 2203. This is where we get the practical advice.
Right, the non-mandatory but super helpful part.
Precisely. Guideline 2203.1 states its purpose is just that, practical direction for planning. And it starts in Section 2203.3 with what it calls preliminary activities.
Okay, what kind of preliminary stuff are we talking about before the main audit starts?
Foundational work, really. It's about getting a solid understanding of the organization you're auditing, their business, their IT environment, their strategic goals, any rules or obligations they have, internal or external.
You can't really audit effectively without knowing the context, can you?
Not at all. You need to understand their world. This phase also involves looking at any previous audit reports.
Oh, learning from past work.
Yeah, seeing what was found before, understanding management's responsibilities within the auditee organization, and figuring out who the key contacts are who you'll need to talk to.
So building that knowledge base and establishing communication lines early on?
Yeah,
Smart.
definitely. Then Guideline 2203.4 brings us back to risk assessment.
We touched on that with the standard.
Yes, and the guideline really hammers home its importance. It repeats the need for risk assessment to identify the high priority areas and activities for the audit review. It's about focus.
So again, finding where the potential biggest issues lie.
Exactly. And it stresses assessing and prioritizing risk, not just in the specific thing being audited, but also in the wider IT context of the organization, both micro and macro views.
A broad perspective.
Yeah.
And I assume compliance is still woven in here.
Oh, absolutely. Guideline 2203.4.4 reminds us that thinking about compliance with laws and standards is ongoing throughout planning and execution. It's always there.
Not just a box to tick at the end.
Never. And for bigger audits, like financial ones, 232.3.4.5 suggests doing a preliminary evaluation of internal controls. This early look helps shape the main engagement plan.
Okay, so if that initial look shows some potential control weaknesses, that probably tells the auditors where to dig deeper later.
Precisely. It helps refine the focus. Now, Section 203.5 gets into documenting all this planning. The guideline says the audit engagement project plan must be part of the auditor's work papers.
Formal documentation, keeping a record. Makes sense. And does it specify what goes in that project plan?
Oh, yes. 203.5.2 is quite detailed. It should clearly state the areas being audited, the type of audit work compliance, performance, etc., the high-level objectives, and the detailed SOAP.
Okay, the basics.
And also, any fact-finding interviews planned, who you'll talk to, and what specific information you aim to get from them or from systems.
So who you'll talk to, what data you need.
Correct. Plus, the plan should describe the actual audit procedures, how you'll verify information, how it becomes evidence. It also needs the resources required, the timeline, the reporting requirements, and the communication protocols agreed upon with the auditee.
Wow, okay, that's a comprehensive blueprint. Really lays everything out.
It aims to, yeah, for clarity and efficiency. And importantly, 202.3.5.6 notes this plan isn't just written and filed. It needs formal review and approval by IT audit management.
An oversight step. Quality control.
Exactly. Ensure it's a solid plan. Then, 202.3.5.7 highlights communicating the relevant bits, scope, timeline, document needs, interview plans to the auditees.
Keeping them in the loop. Essential for cooperation, I think.
Absolutely. Proactive communication avoids surprises and helps them prepare. Nobody likes being caught off guard by auditors asking for things they didn't expect.
True. What about changes? We said plans can adapt.
Right. Guideline 2203.6 covers that. The project plan is a living document. It should be updated as needed, with proper approvals, of course. If new issues pop up during the audit, the guideline suggests options like expanding the scope.
If it makes sense and resources allow.
Or maybe scheduling a separate focused review later for that new issue. And crucially, if the plan does change mid-audit.
Tell the auditee immediately.
Immediately. Keep that transparency. Finally, 202.3.7 zooms in on communication itself. For internal audits, it suggests an engagement letter or something similar to clarify the audit team's role. And clear communication of the plan helps ensure access to people and info.
Makes sense. And for external auditors.
There, it emphasizes a separate engagement letter for each audit, plus the project plan and audit program documenting objectives and scope as a minimum.
More formality for external engagements.
Typically, yes. And for both internal and external, 203.7 loops back to resources. You need to quantify and justify the IT audit resources for each engagement. Be accountable for the time and cost.
Okay, so pulling it all together, Standard 1203 gives us the what, the essential pieces that must be in the plan.
Right, the mandatory framework.
And then Guideline 2203 provides the how. Practical steps, considerations for actually building, documenting, and communicating that plan effectively, from understanding the auditee right through to handling changes.
You've got it. The standard sets the rules, the guideline offers the playbook, and understanding how they work together gives you, the listener, real insight into the structured thinking behind a good IT audit.
And knowing that, well, it helps whether you're in an audit, working with auditors, or just curious about IT governance. It helps communication, collaboration. You just get a better picture of the why behind the process. You see the strategy before the testing even starts.
Which brings up a good point for reflection, maybe. Thinking about all this detail and planning, how does that careful planning actually contribute to the value and the reliability of an IT audit in the end?
That's a great question. And maybe the flip side, too. What are the risks, the potential fallout, if engagement planning is done poorly or skipped over?
Definitely worth pondering. If you want to dig deeper, the ISACA website is the place for all the ITF standards and guidelines.
Right. And you might even think about how these planning principles, understanding context, defining scope, assessing risk, planning resources, communicating, apply in other areas like project management generally.
Absolutely. The core ideas are widely applicable, and perhaps in future deep dives, we could zoom in on specific parts, like different ways to do risk assessments or how to build a really effective audit program, if that's something you'd find useful.
Let us know. But for now, that wraps up our look at engagement planning. Thanks for joining us. We hope this gives you a clear view of the strategic foundations of effective IT auditing.